Welcome to a Chart Nerd technical analysis video. Today we will be discussing the likes of VELO on its weekly time frame. So some very bullish signals here from VELO. As of last week, I think we had a really impulsive, where was we? This was about a 82% move for VELO from 0.018 up to 0.033. Now what we've done here is put in a new 7-month local high, and there's some very bullish statements. So one of which I wanted to mention was these previous closes back in May were at 0.018. So we have just had, as of yesterday's close, a new 7-month candle close high. On top of that, the last local wick high was 0.028 back in May, and as of last week, we actually had a rally up to 0.033. So what we have right now is bullish macro structure. Now why is that? Well, at this point we had some lows, we had a level of resistance, and we built a higher low, and right now we've got a higher high. So coming back from this 0.28 high, we had a really steep correction, found support, we came up, met resistance, came back for a higher low, and right now we've put in a higher high where we've taken out the previous highs back in September, and we've also taken out the previous highs of back in May. So the structure right now is extremely bullish for VELO on the macro. Now this isn't to say that on the lower time frames we could come in for some sort of pullback, and admittedly from this 0.033 high of last week we've actually corrected back down to 0.026. Now is this to be expected? Well, if you consider it, yes. I think meeting resistance after putting in a new local high, after taking out key levels of resistance, new candle close highs, I think meeting a level of resistance here is relatively normal. And again, not financial advice, but I don't think we should panic. All we need to do is sort of analyze the key support areas moving forward, which I would be giving you in this video a little later on. But my overall outlook here is suggesting we've got higher lows, we've got higher highs, the structure remains bullish macro. That's my overall point. The bullish signals are we've had a massive 81% candle last week. We've taken out the prior highs of May, and we are looking extremely good here for VELO moving forward. Now, if we wanted to sort of analyze the pattern, now that in my last video, I did have this ascending triangle that I was analyzing where we had this level of resistance, ascending triangle resistance, and we had this ascending triangle support. And what this means is from this resistance, we had these lows, we had a level of resistance, we came back for a higher low, and then we actually broke out on the 25th of November. Now what we saw from that breakout is we had a nice impulsive week, and then you'll notice we actually came back for a wick touch of support on the ascending resistance trend line. So we'd broken above it, came back down for its support, and then that week just led into a really impulsive move. Now, another bullish statement is this wick high was at 0.028. Our candle closes were at 0.029. So even our candle closes closed above the prior wick high of May. Another bullish statement. But anyways, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here. What I wanted to focus on was the breakout target of this ascending triangle. Now the breakout target actually sits at 0.04. So I think this is where VELO is initially trying to get to from the breakout pattern of this ascending triangle. So in the short term, I think we are to see some sort of pullback. We have to consider that since our 0.01 lows in November, so in the space of 30 days, just under 30 days, VELO actually rallied 215%. Now, when you indulge day to day in VELO's price action, it's kind of hard to scope how impulsive it's actually been. It was only a few weeks ago, a lot of people on X were saying VELO's lackluster, it's lagging behind. But as I said to you, once you form a macro bullish cross, which we did for VELO on the 18th of November, once we formed this weekly bullish cross, I said there would be fireworks for VELO. I said it would be fireworks. This is the first time in history we formed this cross. And since these 0.01 lows, we've seen a 2x. So really and truly, bullish signals. We've taken out previous candle close highs. We've taken out wick highs of May, a 7-month downtrend. We've just put in a new local high. Fantastic signs. Fantastic signs. But again, I'm losing focus here. Albeit considered, we've had a 200% pump. So why can't we go through now a 20 to 30% dip, which could offer more opportunity leading forward into next year? Well, again, I do have support targets. So overall, my breakout target to the upside still remains at 0.04, but in the short term, I think it would be healthy to come back for a key level of support. So a few levels, looking at the weekly here, I will in fact dive into the lower time frame shortly, but a few interesting levels that really sort of catch my eye straight away is these previous weekly closes at 0.023, I think it roughly was. So these candle closes back in May could now come and act as a key level of support because we've broken out of that resistance. We've met a level of resistance at 3.3, and we could just be coming back for a key level of support here, looking for continuation of the trend. So if we can turn these previous candle closes of resistance at 0.023 into support and hold it, I think that could offer a good opportunity for VELO to continue its trend up to those 0.042 targets we have of the ascending triangle breakout. Oh, excuse me, I've just had a fry up. I've got some really bad acid. So that is one area that I think we should keep our eyes on the macro scale of things. Okay, it's important to cover the lower time frames. I will get into that. Because of how impulsive this is, we don't have to come back as far as 2.3. There is other support levels I have that are a little bit higher that I'll get into shortly, but just to cover the macro, you have got these previous candle close highs, and what we also have is this sort of, I think I'm going to include the wicks here, we've got this sort of rough range down here that could also act as support around 0.018/19. Now again, if we was to sort of, I'm not saying this is going to come into fruition, guys, but if we was to pull back, that would be a rough sort of 30% correction from current prices. But the only reason I say is that there is a potential for it here, guys. Again, I'm not saying this has to happen. The only reason I'm saying there's a potential is because once you break out of a key level of resistance, you tend to want to backtest it for support for healthy continuation. So you'll notice we had this leg up into 0.018. We then corrected back down to our local low, of which we've had the 6-week impulsive move. But since breaking out of this resistance that we needed to reclaim on the 25th of November, we've had a really impulsive move and we haven't backtested it for support. So the only reason I have this level here at 0.018 as a place where of interest is because we've broken out the resistance and it hasn't been backtested yet. So we could see that come into fruition. Again, it doesn't have to happen, but it is a key level of support when you work in waves. So we had the wave up, resistance, support, broke out, come back for support on previous resistance, continue the trend. You get the gist. Okay, it doesn't have to happen, but at the same time, it is there and is something we should monitor. Now, again, these candle closes are a key level of support before this could come into fruition. So, of course, we would expect 2-3 to come into play before any chance of coming down to this level of support on previous resistance that hasn't been backtested. So two very interesting areas on the macro timeframes are 0.023 and 0.018. Better to be prepared than not at all. Nothing that I say is financial advice. Now, again, I'm not saying that these corrections have to come into play, but they are something we need to keep our eyes on. Another way to get a key level of support from this sort of macro weekly breakout is to go from our local highs where we're running into resistance back down to the low that we came from. So if we go from our local high at 0.033 back down to 0.0104, I'm going to get some interesting areas of support on for us. So I'm going to add, sorry, it was the 382 that I wanted to add actually. Where's the 382? There it is. So we've got a few key levels of support that I wanted to monitor on the fibs here. So the first one that sort of spikes my interest is the 236 at 0.025. Now on the lower time frames, I'm pretty sure this is one of my targets, so it does have some sort of confluence on the macro. We've got the 0236 here at 0.025, and on the smaller time frames, I think that's a golden ratio fib as well. So there's a little bit of confluence. I will show you that shortly. So we've got the 236 at 2.5, and then we've got the 0.382 and the 0.50. Now these areas here really do spike interest for me, especially the 0.50. Why is that? Well, one, it's part of the golden ratio, the 0.50 and 0.618, the sort of mid golden zone where once you do have a breakout, if you manage to come back and hold that as support, explosive signs. Okay, I think it's a key area of support we look for if we lose support on the lower time frames. Now also it ties up with the wick touch support that we had before last week's breakout, and it also ties up with these previous candle closes that I said we had this resistance, we came back for a level of support, we've broken out. So right now, could we come back down to that support to continue the trend? And again, the 050 sits bang on these previous candle close highs. So this is another sort of point of confluence on the fibs that 18 on these previous candle closes could and most likely would act as a key level of support moving forward. Now again, it doesn't have to come into play. I'm just showing you more signs of confluence here for VELO. Again, as I said, my overall targets for the short to midterm is 0.04. That's our ascending triangle target. Please do not lose focus. I'm just trying to give us targets in the near short term where VELO could find support if we do see any further corrections. Now, so as I was saying, we've got the 236 at 25, we've got the 382 at 21, which could also act as a level of support, and then you've got the 050 at 18. I could be asking too much for these to come into fruition, but I'm just showing you what the charts are showing. These candle closes, we've broken out, we haven't had a retest on it for support. Could we get that before continuation of the trend? Possible, okay? Possible. So those are my support targets. You've got 25 to 18. It's quite a broad range, but we have had 6 weeks of really impulsive price action. And if we analyze, again, not the history repeats, but it does sort of rhyme. Once we had where was we here? We had a sort of 123% move in the space of 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. That then came into quite a large correction. I think it was about 40%, wasn't it? Or 22%? No, yeah, about 47% VELO corrected before actually breaking out again. Now, something to note, if we analyze prior sort of resistance points and then corrections, this one here was a rough 42%. The last one that we had was a rough 47%. If we was to come down, say, a 40% from our local highs, where would that place us? Well, kind of ironic that 42 to 43% puts us back down on these candle close highs and to the 050 fib at 18, 0.018, which is one of the support targets I've got for us on the weekly Fibonacci. So again, a little bit more of confluence. Not saying it has to happen, but if we was to have a similar correction of 40%, just like the last couple after we had some really impulsive moves, this would put VELO back down at 0.018. Now, I think it would scare the crap out of people because although we was there last week, you know, going from 3.3 back down to 1.8, whoa, what's going on? But really and truly, key support would still be holding. So if it does come into fruition, guys, please do not be fearful. Nothing that I say is financial advice. Now, let's get back to some bullish talk. Should we? Let's get back to some bullish talk. So my overall target, as I've said to you guys, that's completely wrong. That's not what I want. My overall target for us, get off. My overall target still remains at 0.04. Now, if we go from I'm going to have to sort all these fibs out. Bear with me for 1 second. We'll get the 236 off, the 050 off, the 618. Yep. And we want the 1272. Right. So my target still remains at 0.04. It still remains at 0.04. So let's look at the lower time frames here. And there's some sort of patterns I did want to show you guys actually as where I think VELO could be coming back down to. So analyzing the 4 hour, we're going to get a fib on from these local highs back down to the low that we came from. We're going to get our key support zones, which is the 050 and the 0618 moving forward. Why didn't the 0618 come up? Did I not click it? That's the 1618. That's why. 0618. So these are some sort of support levels I think VELO could bounce off. So we've actually come back down now to the 0618 at 0.025. So we've just come shy of the golden ratio on the way back down from these highs back down to this low of where we came from on the last sort of small dip. Now, I think there is some sort of confluence here. And why do I expect some short-term relief? Albeit to consider this might not be the low, but I think we see some relief here because if we analyze a previous level of support, where we came up to the 0.033 high. We then came back for support. We ran up to the 3.3 highs again, and then we came back down to this support, but we lost it, and we confirmed it now as resistance and are being pushed down. Okay, so I think what VELO actually has here is some sort of descending triangle pattern, which is a local top pattern, and the breakdown target goes from the level of resistance back down to support of the triangle. You can see it was coiling up in this triangle, got caught between support and a resistance, lost the support, hit our heads on it as resistance, and have now been pushed down. So the breakout target of this triangle, as you can see, brings us down to 0.0256. So we haven't actually technically met that target yet, but we are on track to meet it. And that target sits very close with our 0618 support. So the fact that we had this impulsive move up, Okay, and then we started to put in this bearish top pattern where we had lower highs. Okay, so we had these candle close highs, we had lower candle close highs on the 4 hour, and we eventually lost our support. Okay, so the fact that we lost that support has now entailed the fact that we've come back down to meet that technical target. I'm not sure if you're following very closely on X with me, guys, but I said potentially we could have some sort of A, B, C correction here before VELO looks to continue, and that at the moment has come into fruition. So it's all about, over the next sort of couple of days, finding out whether VELO can hold 0.025 on the retracement from this local high back down to this local low. It's all about holding this golden ratio. Now, if this fails to hold and VELO doesn't start to pick up here and retrace back to the highs that it's come from, that's when we look out to the macro, like the weekly. I've done it kind of backwards. I should have given you the lower time frame targets first. But we then zoom out to our macro targets that I've just gone through with you guys if we lose our lower time frame support levels. So right now, the lower time frame support sits at 0.025. If this is lost, I would expect a minimum retracement back down to 2.2 on these lows. And at that point, we would have to analyze further. But as I said, this technical target of the descending triangle, okay, I'm just going to get it back on with my terrible drawing skills. So from this support of our descending triangle, where we lost that support, we've come down and met that target. So I do expect some sort of relief, possibly today going into tomorrow, but it's whether we can actually start getting back up to these highs that we've fallen from that's the most important thing for VELO here. So the technical target here has been closely met. If we fail to hold the 0.618 and sort of hit our heads on it and lose it as support, I think we could continue further back down to these lows. Okay, and at that point, I think I would have to analyze further on what could happen here for VELO. But what we could come in for is some sort of, this is a 1, this is a 2, this is a 3. If we get a 4 and then a 5 wave down, we could have a macro sort of large correction here, which would be a 32% correction for VELO, at which point I think would offer great opportunity if you've been on the sidelines and waiting for an entry point from these 0.033 highs. I think it would offer a great entry point moving forward, not financial advice. But again, that hasn't happened as of yet, and we still have the 0.618 to hold. So right now, this is the key area of support I think VELO needs to hold on the lower time frames in order to see any sort of continuation upwards to the previous highs that we've come down from. Now again, if we lose this support here on the weekly time frame, as I said to you, we do have those targets on prior closes. So we've got 2.2/3 here, which I think could come in as a key level of support. And then you've also got the prior candle closes on 0.018 on the macro that could act as support as well. Now remember that 0.018 target also ties up, sorry, wrong one. I think it's this low I need to go to. Yep. From this high to this low. The 0.018 target on these previous closes also ties up with our 0.50. So if we lose 2.5, I would expect a minimum of 2.2 on these previous closes to come and try and act as a level of support for continuation. And if we actually come down and sort of lose this previous candle close highs, then you've got the other candle close highs below that we haven't actually back tested since that could come into fruition at 0.018, and that's where VELO may then sort of see this impulsive move. Now, just from a visual perspective here, I'm not sure if this is going to play out very well, but we do have now this sort of ascending level of support for VELO moving forward. Let's see if this has any sort of confluence for us here on those fibs as well. So if we get that Fibonacci back on, going back down to our local low, see, this is what I mean. It could. We could, you know, if lots of ifs and buts, I'm so sorry, but we have to cover everything here. We've got these previous candle closes. That would be my first line of defense if we lose our lower time frame support at 2.5. So 2.2/2.3 if we lose our 4-hour support. Failing that, again, coming down, if we hit our heads here, this could just entail a bit more of a larger drop back down to this sort of 0.50/0.618 area, back on these previous candle closes again for a level of support. So we could see VELO over the next sort of 3 to 4 weeks potentially pull back to a key level of support here before getting the breakout. That could happen. It happened on this pump. Look, we came up here, came back to support. Now we've had another leg up. Could we come back to support before getting the continuation? It's possible, but doesn't have to happen. Again, there are support levels above, and it was just something from a visual representation of this ascending support that I wanted to analyze. But we do have this line of defense here on these previous candle closes at 0.022/23, and we also have on the 4-hour time frame that 0.025 target from that descending triangle we was analyzing moving forward. So I'm sorry, it's been a bit of a complicated one today. Very, very bullish signals on the macro from VELO here. Again, just to highlight those, we have put in a new 7-month local high. We've put in new candle close highs. We've had a 200% move over the past 6 weeks. Fantastic signs. A pullback here is to be expected and is not unhealthy. This is healthy price action once you've put in a new local high. Okay, guys? So again, just before I go, key takeaways on the lower time frame, 0.025 is the golden ratio and could act as a level of support. If we lose that support on the 4-hour, we then zoom back out to the weekly. You could also go into the daily, but I'm going to stick to the weekly here just because of the previous candle closes and support levels. If we lose 2.5, we have these candle closes at 2.3. The candle closes back from May, which could act as support here before continuation. Lose that, you have the candle closes below at 0.018, which is our 0.5 target from this high back down to the 0.01 lows we've come from. So you have my support targets, you have my breakout target. If we find support at higher levels, my breakout target is to 0.042, which is the ascending triangle target from the start of the video. So you have a breakout target to the upside if we remain, and you have support targets below if we come back any further. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope I've managed to cover everything and it hasn't been too confusing. From Chart Nerd TA, take care. Peace out.